Hi, lovely booktubers. I'm Debs. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Reads Stuff. I am here in the book shack. It's cold, so I'm going to make this reasonably speedy. Um, it's Sunday, so it's time for my weekly wrap up, and this is what I've read this week. It's been a quite mixed bag, so I've avoided some of the World War One stuff this week because I was sad about it, and so I decided to read something that weren't going to make me sad. So I've got three non-fiction books, four fiction books, and a children's book, and we're going to start with the non-fiction books. Now, a little while ago, I read a brilliant book. A novel about Azerbaijan, so I thought I would see if I could find a history book. So first up today is A Concise History of Azerbaijan, and it is written by Jahangir Zeynaloglu. What I didn't realise was it was actually written in 1920. And while it was it was vaguely interesting, it read a bit like a junior school pupil's essay. So back from we went back to about 500 to start with, and he lists mainly the people who were in charge in Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan appears to have grown and shrunk over the years, depending on who was controlling it at the time. And I sat with a map on my iPad of Azerbaijan trying to figure out where all these places were. Um, it's interesting in the sense that it shows how somewhere of that strategic region of Europe/Asia was subjected to so many invasions over the years. And we're talking Turkey, we're talking Iran, we're talking Russia predominantly. Um, it's not particularly well written. A couple of things about the physical book annoyed me in that the look at this, okay? This is the title page for part 4. But part 4 starts there. So why would you put the title page on a left-hand page? That's just annoying. 3 times it does this. I mean, this obviously isn't the fault of the author, because the author wrote this in 1920 and probably isn't around anymore. There were a couple of typos, and there were a couple of really annoying lines of spacing, which obviously I can't find now. But it read as a list of people who were ruling Azerbaijan, and then underneath it was a list of the wars that they fought. Oh, here we go. Look, this is what I mean about the spacing. I find that really annoying. So not a huge success, but I did learn some things in here. Like, for example, one of the big cities had a female mayor in the 1300s, and he just sort of flew by that. There was no explanation about the facts that he was imparting, and no discussion about them. It read literally like a list of facts. Yeah, not that enjoyable, really. The second history book I read was, well, these aren't in order. These are just as I pick them up. This is 20th Century Britain, a very short introduction by Kenneth O. Morgan, part of the Oxford University Press series. I like these Oxford University Press series, but you can't fit 20th century Britain into that space and do it justice. So this, it's a bit airy fairy, really. Um, it's split into, it's mostly split into decades, but it misses out the 1900s completely. Um, it starts with the First World War, and I've read very recently much deeper books about the First World War. But it has subheadings within each chapter about politics, the arts, religion, um, social division, traditional order, things like that. It wasn't for me. Excuse me. But for somebody who isn't British and doesn't know more about these things that are in the book, it might be all right. The final non-fiction book was brilliant. This is The Devil's Cup by Stuart Lee Allen. It says coffee, the driving force in history. I thought it was going to be a history of coffee, and to a certain extent it was, but it was more Stuart Lee Allen travelling the route that coffee took around the world. So he starts off in Ethiopia, where coffee originated, just like humans, meant to be, obviously. Um, he then follows its route out of Africa. So he goes to Djibouti first and then to Yemen. From Yemen, he ends up in Turkey. And the Ottoman Empire laid siege to Austria, which is how coffee ended up in Vienna. And it's fun. It's fun. He's a good storyteller. It's a light-hearted read, but it's also very informative. And he follows Coffee's journey. I mean, even he gets a boat from Djibouti to Yemen and ends up at sea for God knows how many weeks. Oh, and they were stranded on a desert island at one point as well. It's very entertaining. Enjoyed that very much. Now, a children's book. I've got a lot of David Walliams books on my bookshelf and I've never read any, so I thought I'd start with this one. And the reason I started with this one, Grandad's Great Escape, is because I knew that it was vaguely based on one of my favourite newspaper articles of all time about a pensioner called Bernie Jordan who escaped from his care home in Brighton and took himself off to France for the 70th anniversary of D-Day celebrations. And this was in 2015. Sorry, it wasn't. It was 2014. This was written in 2017. And it is the story. I mean, Bernie was a naval officer. Grandad in this is a pilot, a Second World War pilot, and he's losing his mind a bit. He can't live with his family. Alzheimer's has set in, but he has a wonderful, wonderful relationship with his grandson. And this is the story of Grandad slowly succumbing to dementia and having to be put in a home. But there's a twist. The home is not a good place. And grandson and granddad have got to work out what's going on there and help the residents escape. It was really good. I think David Walliams is trying to set himself up as being the next Roald Dahl. The pictures in here are good as well. Also, it's a big, thick, chunky book, so it helps kids to get used to reading something more substantial than some of the children's books that are on the shelves these days. And then we have 4 different adult fiction books. A couple of these are left over from events earlier in the year. There we go. God on the Rocks by Jane Gardam. I'm sure this is very good, but it just didn't strike a chord with me. It starts off about a little girl called Margaret who's 8, whose parents, who are extremely religious, have just had a baby boy. She feels a bit left out, although her parents are trying, well, her mother is trying very desperately hard not to make her feel left out. And it ends up being about religion and parental influence, not on her, but on her mother and her mother's childhood friend. And it's all a bit, it was okay. It was okay. I wouldn't read it again. I'm not going to keep this one because I wouldn't read it again. Now we have, that was left over from Shorty September, by the way. Now we have one that was left over from Garb August. I bought loads and loads of Westerns, trying to find just one with a cigarette card ad. No, a cigarette advert in it. I failed, but I bought lots of Westerns. And I read a couple of them. And actually, I decided I quite enjoyed them. So this is Horse Thief Trail. And it's by Gladwell Richardson. And it was quite good fun. I mean, I do find with Westerns that if you've read one, you've probably read most of them, in that it does seem to be that we have a Lone Ranger type character um, who is out of town because someone's stolen something that belongs to him or whoever he works for, and on the way he meets a girl, and eventually he manages to return whatever it is that was stolen. But it's a bit of fun. There's a bit of let's clear my mind from the depressing World War II content. Then this worked. It was quite good. This reread Ragnar Jonasson Snowblind. I love a bit of Scandi noir, and this is a good bit of Scandi noir. This is about Arithor Arison, who is he takes a job as a policeman. It's his first role as a policeman in the very north of Iceland. It's a very cold and isolated town, and he's there in winter, and there's some murders, and it's really good. I like a bit of Scandi noir. Ragnar Jonasson is one of my favourites. Like I say, I've read it before, but I like I like the feeling of claustrophobia that Icelandic noir particularly manages to stir up, and the wildness of the land and the sense of isolation. Um, love them. Have lots more. Probably will reread some of those. And finally, a book in translation. One of my favourite authors, Ismail Kadare, and this is The Fall of the Stone City. And the Stone City we are talking about is Jirakkasta. And this is a quite surreal novel that centres on the city and two doctors, both of whom have the same name. And it's very like, oh, why can't I find it? Gorametto, that's it. Big Gorametto and Little Gorametto. And it's a period starting from 1943, where over literally a couple of years, this Albanian city finds itself under the control of the Italian fascists, and then the German Nazis, and then the Russian communists. Um, he's very his language is sparing, but beautiful, and the stories always have a bit of, there's something surreal about them, and I just love the way he writes. And so this was an absolute joy, even though I'd read it before. So those are the books I've managed to complete this week. Some of them tick the box for Non-fiction November. Some of them tick the box for Historathon Q4. And none of them tick the box this week for World War November or for A Winter of Wyndham. The other thing I'm reading still is this great beast, Postwar, A History of Europe Since 1945 by Tony Judt. I am buddy reading this with Stephanie Cohen and John David. We are now halfway through. Well, the book is in 4 parts, and we have just completed the second part and about to embark on the third part. Lots of words. There's lots of words, and the information in there is granular. So it's definitely not a difficult read in that you struggle to get into it. I'm really enjoying it. There's just such a lot of information in there, and sometimes it's difficult to take it all in on the first read, so you have to go back and read bits again, particularly when names are thrown at you and you don't necessarily know them. But it's brilliant. It's really well written, and I'm really enjoying it. We are planning to finish it by the end of December. I reckon we'll probably be done just before Christmas. So that's been my reading week. I hope you've had a good reading week. We're coming to the end of November. I think the only things I will be taking part in December are carrying on with the Read What You Own challenge, and all of these obviously count. I'm very pleased. I haven't bought a book for 21 days, but I've read 22, so I am more than a book a day. Also, there is a reading event called Remember December coming up, and I will probably talk about that later in the week. I've got a tag video coming up on Tuesday, which will be fun. And also, I think it's probably about time I did a roundup of my Around the World reading, because some of these count. And I don't want to forget the ones that I've read that count towards my Read Round the World. Now, as far as Read What You Own challenge goes, can you see? Look, up here. That's a gap. I have cleared 22 centimetres on my bookshelves in here. Now, obviously, as I said before, only adult fiction, not classic fiction. Only adult fiction counts as for clearing the space, because once I've read the adult fiction books, I take them inside and put them on the I have read this bookshelf. Children's books just recirculate on the children's bookshelves, and same with non-fiction, and the same with classic books. So I've cleared 22 centimetres of adult fiction since November the 6th, which I'm pleased about, because when all this is over, I'm going to fill those gaps with some more books. That's the plan. I shall continue with my marathon reading next week, and I will be back on Tuesday with a tag video. Thank you for watching. Nice of you to pop by. If you would like and subscribe, I'd be very pleased. And I'd love to hear what you've been reading, whether you've read any of these, whether you hate them or love them. In the meantime, have a very nice week. And and I will speak to you soon. Bye for now.